boss agrees with secretary that I am not the office manager, so I stop managing the office.
When I was doing my articles at a small law firm internship to be admitted as an attorney, I was the go-to person for everything at the office, setting up computers, buying stationery, paying bills, going to court, seeing clients, etc. After being admitted as an attorney, I continued doing all this because the secretary only did about 20% of what a secretary would usually do and refused to do anything else. My boss does some shady business, don't pay taxes, etc., so he couldn't just fire her for fear of her ratting him out. He also never disciplined her. We are not in the US. Since we worked from my boss's mother's house, the secretary also spent about 50% of her day just chatting to his mother, and they became fast friends. Guess who was always the evil one that everyone ganged up on? Yours truly. I was made out to be incompetent at my job, and I used to cry a lot and almost became an alcoholic from work stress. One day the secretary got really upset with me after I asked her to buy stationery since we didn't even have staples, and after a heated argument told me that I'm not the office manager and should stop lording it about as if I was. Bear in mind I was her senior both as an attorney and in number of years worked at the firm. My boss did nothing and rather got upset with me, and so did his mother. I decided there and then I am done doing both secretary work and my attorney work because I was working roughly 50 to 60 hours per week, standard as 40, trying to get everything done without receiving overpay. The unemployment rate in my country is around 30%, and in the legal field supply of lawyers exceeds demand. She knew this and my boss knew this, but no one cared that I was basically working myself into an early grave. Cue malicious compliance. If everyone agrees that I am not the office manager, then I will stop managing the flow of the office and only do my attorney work. I stopped paying the bills, buying the stationery, reminding my boss of important meetings, etc. Within 2 weeks the electricity was cut off for 10 days because it wasn't paid, and my boss's elderly mother and the rest of his family had no electricity. We could also not work for those 10 days. Once the electricity went on, the phone lines were cut because of non-payment. We could again not work. The post piled up, there were no stationery. We couldn't do service of court documents because our service providers cut us off. It went on for weeks. I simply worked around the issues and sorted my life out. One example, when the Wi-Fi was off, I used my cell phone to hotspot my laptop without telling anyone. In the end, my boss and his mother begged me to do what I used to do, but I refused. Since I was focusing more on my actual work, my fees increased and my pay increased as well. Shortly thereafter I moved away from that office to our secondary office and worked alongside lovely colleagues who all did what they got paid to do. I have been at this new office, same firm, just a different location, for the last 2 years.
Not qualified for the promotion, then I'll just do my job.
Edit, which TLDR at the end. A few years ago I worked for a furniture store in the back store. My job consisted of unloading and loading trucks, assembling furniture and placing it on the main floor of the store. After around 6 months there, my supervisor announced he resigned, meaning his post was up for grabs. I had all the technical requirements, so I applied, but they gave the job to another one of my colleague who had more experience, which was totally reasonable. After maybe 1 year, my then supervisor just stopped coming into work for no reason. He just decided he had enough and he just left, number 2 week notice or anything. So while the director tried to get to him, I took over the role of supervisor. I was the one with the most experience, which means that combined with my regular work, I was now the one telling people what to do, when, doing the schedule, and all the paperwork for the shipment. 3 weeks later my colleague was officially fired by my director. In those 3 weeks I kept doing the job of supervisor, and doing it pretty well, so I thought that the promotion would come to me, but my director did nothing. I went to see him, explained what I had been doing and asked if I got the promotion, to which he answered that I was not qualified, nor smart enough to do this job. After some thinking I just decided that if I was not smart enough to do the job, then I shouldn't do it, so I went back doing my regular job, and I also started looking for something else. 4 to 5 days after I stopped filling in, my director come see me in the back store asking why the the job isn't being done. After all, without me to organize it, nothing was getting out of the store to be delivered to the client. I just reminded him of our previous meeting and he told me, "Yeah, I remember that. What I meant is you're not qualified to get the pay bonus for the job, you still have to do the job, you idiot." I have to admit I still wonder how tough that would work. Still a bit dumbfounded, I just told him that if I wasn't going to get paid for it I certainly won't do the job, and that considering we were already short-staffed with my old supervisor gone, he should be a bit more polite. Apparently this was an unreasonable request, a total lack of respect to him and worthy of firing me. Yep, still don't get how that would fix anything, but hey, he's the boss. I packed everything and left knowing that the back store, which needed 5 people to operate, was now down to 3, with the most experienced worker having a total of 4 months. It only took my boss one day to call me back and telling me, maybe he went overboard and that perhaps we could arrange something for the promotion, to which I replied that I would not be coming back since I had a few interviews lined up. I hung up while he was still cussing at me. After a few months at my new job I heard some surprising news. The store had closed down after 2 other backstore employees resigned. Gotta admit that it felt good to see my old boss finally get what he deserved. TLDR, my old boss doesn't want to promote me but still want me to do the job, fires me for not accepting to, and soon after I left for a better job, lost his shop.
Only take breaks when I tell you to. Sure, no problem. I used to work at a call center where we would get flooded with calls constantly. This is a story of how a busybody boss thought they understood everything since they were in charge. At the work we were given 2 15-minute breaks and 1 45-minute lunch break. The breaks were scheduled into our day so you could see when they would be, but this would change day by day. My role was a bit different than the normal agents as I was specifically dealing with the higher issue calls. These calls could take up to 1 hour to complete and the caller would need to stay on the line, unless they were fine with a call back later, but this was rarely the case. Since I never knew when I would be getting these calls, my break times were a shot in the dark if I would or wouldn't be on a call. I would just take them as soon as the call was done if they ever intersected, which they did 99% of the time. Enter my boss. During a performance review I hit all the marks except for attendance. I asked about this as I know I missed a few days, but always with a reasonable update for time frame and never had a no-show day where there is no warning that I'm not coming in. My boss stated that attendance also applies to break and lunch times, and since I rarely took them at the requested time, I was getting written up. I explained my role, that they hired me for, and the challenges involved. They did not care and stated I needed to take breaks when I was told to. I asked for them to send me an email so that I could print it out, put it on my desk and never forget again. My boss smiled ear to ear, probably because they thought I was groveling at that point, and sure enough they did, stating in the email, "You must take your breaks only when the schedule tells you to, no time else." There is no excuse. I saved it, printed it out, sent a copy to my own email and followed it to the letter. Next call that happened that same day, of course, had the long call crossing over with a break issue. I asked the customer if it would be okay for a call back. They said no. I stated that unfortunately I cannot stay on the line as I am required to take my break. They became enraged and demanded to speak with my boss. I told my boss. They said that I need to apologize and finish the call. I showed them the email they just sent to me and said, "You told me to take my break at this time no matter what. I'm just doing what you told me to do. I'm taking my break. Would you like the customer transferred over? Or should I just hang up?" They took the call over, and from that day on I never had a missed attendance mark. God, busybody bosses are the worst.
Won't let me plant sunflowers? Fine.
Story happened a couple of years ago, but it's my favorite lawyer story and I hope you enjoy it. None of the following is legal advice. Don't take legal advice from randos on the internet. TL, drive, client gets to plant sunflowers. Client walks into the office and asks us for a contract review. He then hands over an HOA contract. Before slogging through a whole HOA contract, I asked him what he was hoping to accomplish. They want me to dig up my sunflowers. Your sunflowers? Yes, I planted a row of sunflowers outside my house. They pranced by and said that sunflowers are not allowed per the contract I signed. So I want you to tell me if that is true or not. Sir, before anything else I need to tell you that this will likely be an hourly fee bill. HOAs are notorious for dragging things out, so these could quickly become expensive sunflowers. I don't care. This is America and I should be able to plant sunflowers, goddammit. Still thinking he wasn't that serious about sunflowers, I asked for a 3-hour retainer. He immediately pulled out a checkbook and paid for 4 hours. So I buckled down to review the alleged anti-sunflower clause. Just for reference, the sunflowers he wanted to plant were really big, 5 feet, and all along the front of the house. It was a very substantial amount of sunflowers. The contract did indeed contain a clause, with a very thorough list, on which plants were and were not allowed to be planted. The list had just about every plant I could think of, in alphabetical order, think apple, banana, cauliflower, dill, asterisk. Sunflowers included. Corn was not included, which becomes very important later. Quick legal point, if you write no dogs allowed, it is normally assumed that you are talking about all dogs generally. If you write no labs, golden retrievers, or poodles allowed, it is normally assumed that all other dogs are allowed. Sometimes a not great attorney will write a super long list to pad hours, read, charge more, instead of just writing no plants without prior approval or something. I called the client back in for the bad news. In explaining the above legal point, I let him know that the hoa got a raw deal from whoever drafted the contract. No can do on the sunflowers. But if it makes you feel any better, they were probably overbilled by whoever wrote this contract. Pretty shoddy work too. They even forgot to write down corn, but they included nonsense like dragon fruit. So yes to corn, no to sunflowers? I didn't really check the contract for corn. But it's not prohibited in the plant section, so probably? Excellent. That'll work. I thought he was oddly happy with bad news. Then 2 or 3 weeks later he came in with a picture of his house, surrounded by huge sunflowers. What happened? This guy drove out to the country and bought obnoxiously large and ugly cornstalks. He promptly planted them where the sunflowers had been. When confronted by the hoa, he told them, paraphrasing, to suck at the contract lets me plant corn. Then after some negotiation he agreed to take the corn down, in exchange for permission to plant sunflowers. Now we are friends, he is still a great client, and he lives surrounded by a ridiculous moat of sunflowers.
Nothing says I can't wear a beard net with the rest of the guys. 25F.
During undergrad I worked at a deli in a major supermarket. Most of my coworkers were also in college, and we all got along and generally had a good time. We usually didn't have too much trouble, but for some reason a couple of managers had decided that they didn't like one of my coworkers. Let's call him Corey. They would nitpick his work and give him a hard time for things the rest of us never got in trouble for. One morning, they decided that his 5 o'clock shadow warranted a beard net. Now this was an unusual request considering that 1, no one without a beard had ever been told to do this before, and 2, he had barely any stubble, and 3, they made a big deal about it and seemed to be trying to make him feel bad about it. Cue the malicious compliance. Managers aside, I was the only female employee in the department at the time. So I stroll up and ask what's going on. They point out his stubble. I respond that I'm certain that I have eyebrow hairs longer than that, and in mock concern, I ask if I should be wearing my hairnet over them. They sort of look at each other, and hesitantly say no. You don't need to do that. I ask why not, because it's likely that my eyebrow hairs would be in someone's food if we're worried about chin stubble. They persist that no, I shouldn't worry about it. Then I ask about the fine hairs on a woman's face. What about those? Should I be shaving? They're catching on now. They tell him to put on a beard net and leave. He does. And so do I. Solidarity. I don't think I've seen so many people double take and start laughing before. The customers and my indirect managers thought it was hilarious. When they would ask me about it, I would just say that I was protecting the food in the store from any potential hairs, real or imagined. By noon, when the original pair of managers returned, I was having a very good day. They begged me to take the beard net off, and I pointed out that there was nothing in the store policy saying that I couldn't wear PPE, which included beard nets. I wore it until the end of my shift that day. They never bothered Corey about his stubble after that.
May your day be filled with joy and happiness. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe for more quality content every day.